Welcome to Between the Before and After, a podcast about the stories that shape us. I'm your host, Coach John McClernand, and each episode I bring you an inspiring guest with a moving story that shines a light on the power of the human spirit. Before we dive in, I want to let you know about two very important things. Number one, the stories shared here are often gritty, raw, and vulnerable, and very likely will include speaking about sensitive topics suited for a mature audience. Number two, this podcast is also broadcast live on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. So on whatever platform you follow myself or Freedom Nutrition Coaching, you have the opportunity to participate in this discussion during the live stream. And we encourage your participation both by commenting and asking questions. And so this podcast is about exploring the stories that take place between the before and after photos, not just in the realm of weight loss, but in all areas of life. So let's dive in. All right, so I'm excited to have Sandy Joy Weston on the show today, and I believe you are really trying to live up to your middle name, and that is to bring more joy to the world. and I think Sandy Beaches and Joy, and yeah. So super excited having the show. Where are you coming from, and what are you up to right now?
Where I'm coming from is Berwyn, Pennsylvania, which is about 35 minutes out of brotherly love, Philadelphia.
All right, cool.
What I'm up to right now is the gods were with me. I sold my health club and wellness business in 2019. Yes.
Yeah.
And I made my side gig my main gig. My side gig was being an author, speaker, and also hosting podcasts, which you were on one of them.
I was. It was a great episode, I hear.
Oh, it was phenomenal.
One of the best in history. So
I had so much fun. It was fun.
That's awesome. I'm really glad to be able to reciprocate. And so your podcast, what's the name of that podcast?
Well, my one I've been doing for almost 10 years, but it's changed names. It's called Let's Keep It Real. But about 2.5 years ago, I started something live just for women because women around the world were saying after the age of 35, they weren't feeling heard. So I called it, Hey, I got something to say. And it's a 30-minute live show that I do.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we have a blast. I record it so people can't, see it at the time.
They can watch the replay. Yeah.
Oh my God, it's hysterical.
Yeah, that is absolutely fantastic. And so, you've done a lot of things in your life, from being, I think, a fitness expert for NBC 10, which meant that you were on television. You were maybe more than a talking head, because you were a talking head plus torso plus legs, or most people sit behind a desk and shuffle papers, but maybe as a fitness expert, you didn't have the luxury of sitting behind a desk and shuffling papers. You were up and moving. So
it was fun. I mean, that was just, again, one of the side things, because strategically where one of my health clubs was located, all the news stations were right there. So what happened is, back in the good old days when people really paid you to be on the news, they would come over and say, "Oh, we're short a story. You got anything, Weston?" And then I'd come up with a story at the last minute.
Yeah.
To fill a gap, when there wasn't a fire or a murder. And so
right. In the city of brotherly love.
Yes. And then it ended up being a full-time gig. I'm not a full-time gig, but that it was my steady gig. And it was so great. So much fun.
Right. So, being on TV, is it all that it's cracked up to be?
I love it. I'm not saying everybody else loves it, but remember, it's different. A lot of times I would go live.
Yep.
And I love live because you never know what I'll do. And we had
a blast.
Just like we're doing today. And then we also did recorded things. But for me, I was doing exactly what I love doing, which I would take some sport or activity, bring on an expert. So, for example, if it was mountain biking, I'd bring on a mountain biking expert to show how, if you ever get this, the pro. And then we'd show how you would do it, and especially for families, or bring it down to the level that everybody could do it. So I tried all these different things, things that I sucked at, like.
Yeah. All right, let's try mountain biking, because I've never done this before.
That I was good at, because I still mountain bike, but like windsurfing.
Yeah. Okay.
And, that was bad, really bad, but it was fun. So I got to meet all these neat people. From every walk of life and every sport. And then sometimes we did mindset things, and then bring it to the everyday person and say, okay, let's borrow from the athlete, and what can we learn from them to apply to the everyday life?
Yeah. Cool. Well, but along the way, it wasn't always these sort of sunny ways. And
Isn't that a show?
yeah,
Sunny ways. It's always sunny in Philadelphia.
there we go. It's always sunny in Philadelphia, but maybe that wasn't always the case. And you didn't necessarily grow up in Philadelphia. You grew up in Jersey. Is that right?
I did grow up in Jersey. I don't know if
Yeah,
anybody's heard of Phillipsburg, New Jersey, but it's right on the border of Pennsylvania near, if you heard of Allentown. So it goes
I haven't,
Allentown,
but yeah.
Allentown, Pennsylvania.
I'll smile and nod like, oh
All
yeah, I
right, go.
totally know
Oh,
where it is.
yeah,
Yeah,
Allen.
yeah.
Well, there's such.
Right,
Never
yeah.
mind. Anyhow, it was known because the drinking age was 18 at the time in Jersey and 21 in Pennsylvania. So you imagine the bridge between Pennsylvania and Jersey was very busy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So then was there a lot of impaired people driving back across the bridge where the cops just kind of hang out and like wait for, leaving Jersey to go back to
I don't
Pennsylvania?
think they cared back then. No, they did. I don't know. I think there's a lot of people walking across the
Right, right. Fair enough.
because
Okay.
there was no Uber,
What? No Uber? Whoa, life without Uber? I could
Life
hardly
without,
imagine.
can you imagine? Yeah.
Yeah. No kidding. Look at how far we've come. So, but you ran into some already some adversity in childhood.
Oh, you want to talk about our conversation we had earlier about
Yeah, because I think what's really interesting is how these experiences that take place in childhood begin
Yeah,
to shape how we
absolutely.
navigate adulthood. And
You know
so,
what? We were talking about that because, well, for the first time, and this is a rare thing, somebody who had no idea who I was, never met me, didn't hear me sing, didn't hear me do anything at the gym, read my book and contacted me on social media if I was willing to train her virtually. And she was from another state. And we got to talking. And I said, listen, just so you know, I'm not just all about the fitness end of it. Mine's mind, body, spirit. It's like a whole thing. And she's like, oh, yeah, I read your book. And she knew line after line. I'm like, oh, damn, I said that was good. And so she asked me, she's like, I don't understand. She had come from a difficult background too with her family. And she's like, how did you know that at a young age? Like, how were you so wise at such a young age? I said, well, it's one of three things. One, I've had a lot of lifetimes. Two, I've had a lot of lifetimes and divine intervention. Or three, they were coping skills. Now we can go with whatever, but
fair enough. Yeah.
So my entire life, John, I'm going to say for the most part of my life, until maybe not even a year and a half ago, 2 years, maybe 2 years, people just assumed I grew up with an amazing family, happy, they must be pippy skippy, and
Right.
they must have had money and just lots of love. I mean, well balanced, whatever. I never told people otherwise, but they never really asked. They, how people, they just, even some of my close friends were like, we just thought this is your life. And I live in a really nice area now.
Right.
And then I wrote my first book and I was 70,000 words short. And I'm like, what? She's like, didn't you read the contract? This is what I go, no, this is a guidebook. This is not a novel. She's like, Sandy, the contract says. So for some reason, I don't know how me and my agent missed that. I said, okay, maybe it's time to tell my story. And I just put a little piece in it, John. Like we're talking not even that much. And it was in a very lighthearted way. Well, that piece, which is what you're talking about, the journey, was what impacted people the most. They resonated with that, and it allowed them to understand where I was coming from, my background, and why they should believe in what I'm saying.
Right. Yeah. Because if you already started with like a silver spoon in your mouth and it's like you never really had to struggle to get to where you are, it's like, well, that's not really an inspiration.
Well, and and I'm not saying there's like people that are successful, at that, trainers, but for me, I was more about the mindset. Like fitness was my vehicle to spread joy. So that was the first part. Then I just took a course recently to up my keynote speaking. Shout out to Heroic Public Speaking. And I showed them my keynote and they're like, if you really want to have the impact you want and reach all these people, you have to take them more on an emotional journey. It can't be all the fun and uplifting stories. So for the first time, John, I added some of those stories in. So I think it's time for me to share one with you. Is that okay?
Let's do it.
All right. So, because it's something that really impacted my life in a really good way. So just bear with me. So here I am. Actually, I think I was 8 years old.
Okay.
And I lived in this little town in Jersey, cute little town, Alpha, New Jersey, little home. Like, do you ever see those half a doubles? So you have a neighbor, but I had a little porch, little yard, little tree, and friends in a great school. I'm skipping home, probably with my brother one day from school. And there, as big as day, we stopped in our tracks, was a huge padlock on our house. And it said, eviction notice, must have everything out within 24 hours. And I looked to the side, and there in the garage, everything we owned, not much, but everything we owned was piled up in the garage. I wish I could say I was totally surprised, but my mom had dealt with her entire life severe mental health issues. I mean, she battled a lot of demons. So she would stay up a lot of nights screaming and yelling. So imagine if you lived, you're the landlord on the other side, right?
Right, yeah.
And my dad probably didn't pay the rent because all his money, he was a great, he made a nice living, blue collar worker, made machine parts for Ingalls Iran, but all his money went to her medicine and mental health clinics. So it was I think they put up with this longer than they should because of me and my brother. My brother was a year and a half older than me. So there we stood. Everything has to get out. And I'm like, I can't imagine the fear that was in my eyes, but I also was really angry. Like, how could my dad get it to this point? Here we are.
Right. Yeah.
Kid.
Yeah.
And putting up with mom this long. I mean, I get it. Mental health issues are severe and my heart goes out, but to put up with it this long, it was just crazy. So what happened?
You said one detail there that you kind of sort of glossed over, and that was like, your mom would be screaming like through the night, many nights. Most nights, and that was her coping with whatever's in her head, trying to get it out, maybe, in a sense.
Well, she would sleep most days till like 3:30 in the afternoon, and then stay up all night. Like she was on a bad cycle, and it was her way. I'm not trying to sugarcoat it because it was horrific, but mental illness, especially back then, they really didn't have a clue. And
no, they didn't.
Being poor, it really was bad. So I'm sure she didn't have the best treatments and and the best medicine. And the poor woman, just probably in the right situation, maybe she wouldn't have suffered so much. Yeah. But she did. So what she would do, because you were happy or resting, she didn't want you to be that way. You know what I mean? She wanted,
because she was disturbed and distressed and
you
angry.
Want to bring people into that. Now you really don't. You regret it, and you always say you're sorry. But then, when you're in it, all you're trying to do is get a reaction from the people because you're suffering so much, and you don't know what else to do. I mean, I don't know that fully because that's just my interpretation of what I saw. Like if if we weren't sleeping or pleasant or happy, it wouldn't have been so bad, because.
Yeah.
So what happened next is so you're back to we're standing there, I'm 8, my brother's like 9.5. My dad's brother, Uncle Harold, pulls up in the car, slams on his brake. He's pissed, right? That he has to deal with this. He opens the door, goes, all right, time to grow up. No toys, only necessities, whatever can fit in your dad's car and my car. Not that we had a lot, but I mean, he was breaking shit. Everything was going. And all we did is pack up the 2 cars. Me and my brother are crying our eyes out. And we go off. We put the stuff we have in storage and we stay in a hotel for a little bit. Then what happens, John? Oh my God. I just remember this. Is my dad now can't handle it. So he checks himself into a mental ward in a hospital. because life is too tough now.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
They take my brother, who's older than me, but more sensitive, to my grandparents, and they leave me, the youngest, with my mom, which we eventually were in a little apartment waiting for a place to open up in the projects.
Right.
And I'm thinking, oh my God, I get that I'm tough, but this is a bad plan. Why would you leave me alone? But everyone kept saying, you can handle it. So.
And you're how old at this time?
8.
8. Yeah.
Yeah.
And your mom and dad, like your dad stayed with your mom in all of this?
All of it.
Wow. Credit to him.
So, you know what? I'm so glad you said that, because some people don't believe that, but whatever. So now, a couple months go by of just me and mom, and then something opens in the projects and we move in. Now, trust me, that was one of the best things, because I found my peeps. It wasn't like drive-bys and it wasn't guns. It was just poor, and I didn't feel so out of place. And I had people to relate to, and I really got my little posse, my group. It was worse in the house, but here's the deal. We were talking about coping mechanisms. When my mom would scream all night, whatever, my dad a lot of nights would go sleep in a car because he couldn't handle it. Or a lot of times we didn't have a car. So he'd walk 20 or 30 minutes to the laundromat and sleep like sitting up because it was warm and cozy. No one bother him. My brother, I don't blame him, would blast rock and roll music and get stoned.
Okay. At what age now is he doing this?
I mean, I was not, I'm 9 now. So, he's
11
and a half, whatever, doing what, and that's what you did. And like, how you got by.
Right.
And he didn't do ever anything serious, but go to anything serious. It was always getting like stoned.
Right. Yeah.
Probably drinking as I got older. And I was a very obstinate person, and I wanted to be different than everyone else. So I had to find a different route. Well, I had started dancing because one of my uncles, another uncle, I bribed to pay for my dance lessons since I was 4, and he would take me. So I would use movement to cope with that. Like, I would put my favorite jams on and dance around. So the top 3 things that I used back then, the biggest one was movement. The second one was words. I don't know what made me do this, but every day I would pick a different word and I'd focus in on that word. So it could be peace, and I still do it to this day: peace, love, joy, ease and flow, fun, powerful. And I would tell myself, if I could just focus in on that word and think about that word, and then I would ask myself, what do I need to do right now to feel joy, to feel more powerful, to have fun? And then do it, and just imagine yourself there. And then I would accompany a lot of times with movement. So I had movement and words, and things got really bad. I would scribble, scrabble in my journal. And I would take light of everything. Everything was a joke to me. Like, I would figure out ways to laugh. She's throwing pots and pans. I told my brother he was going to be a great baseball star because he was catching everything. Like, I always had a joke. I always had a joke. Well, when you're talking about things that keep you in that powerful mindset, I had no idea that what I was doing was going to have such an impact on my life and others. I just knew I felt better when I did that. So every day for a minute or 2 minutes, every hour, when I would dance, focus in on my word, visualize where I wanted to go, laugh about things. And it wasn't long, but I did that every single day of my life. I was like retraining my brain, resetting my brain. I didn't know what I was doing.
Right. Yeah.
I just knew it worked. Like, I had no clue that it was going to take me beyond what anybody ever thought was possible. And I would train people in it and live my life in it. I had no clue.
Right. So you've got your dad sleeping in the laundromat most nights.
A lot of nights.
a lot of nights just to get some sleep. Your brother blasting rock and roll and getting stoned, and you're putting on jams and dancing to kind of cope with your mom's misery. And you're now living in the projects, but you have found your people.
I
You
have my
found a
people.
you found a group of people that you can kind of connect with. Did you ever find anyone to like go and like sleep over with, or to escape the chaos, or was that a thing that happened in the projects?
Okay, so back then there was no cell phones.
Right.
So, and people's phone numbers were in the yellow book. So
Right.
when I would try to escape out, a lot of times my mom would start driving people nuts and keep them up all night, or they'd have to take their phone off the hook because she was trying to find me. As I got older, around 15, I had a boyfriend, and the mom would let me stay over their house sometimes, because it's the same thing. She's going to drive you nuts and call to try to find me. But I know it's not funny, but I told you I do look at the light side. So here, it is a funny story. The kids in the neighborhood, for even them, my mom was completely out of control, right? They would call her Old Lady Weston, and they would say it's the Old Lady Weston show. And we had like these picnic benches all through the projects.
Right.
So they would come to the picnic bench right by my house. They would bring like popcorn, beer, whatever. And it's like, Old Lady Weston's at it again, because who knows what demon she was battling and screaming and yelling. And so it was like, to them, entertainment. Even one guy would have his guitar and start making songs up about it, right?
Okay.
So
trying to make light of a difficult situation.
And mostly for me. It wasn't like they felt bad for me. They weren't making fun of me. So
Right.
there was 2 floors. So I was up on the second floor. And what they would do is they would a lot of nights yell up to me, okay, she's in the front in the kitchen. So they would tell me where she was. So I would tie my sheets together and then climb out the window.
Right.
So that I could hang out. And sometimes I would get caught, but a lot of times I wouldn't. And then we go hang out on the picnic tables, and if the weather permitted, even if it was cold, that's where a lot of us hung, and played music, listening to somebody always playing guitar, singing. I remember one of the first times. Now, remember, I'm like 9 years old. Keep that in mind. And it's my new peeps. And we're, sitting there, and you have your roughnecks and your druggies and who knows what. But there was this one woman there, to me, she probably was like 20.
Right, yeah.
And she said she was a palm reader. She said she was a palm reader. So either she was a palm reader or she was a really stoned, whacked out chick. I don't know, but all I can remember this.
Maybe both.
Yeah, maybe both as well. And she said, "Do you want me to read your palm?" I was like, "Sure." So she reads my palm and she goes, "Oh my God, you are going to have a very, very short life." I go, "I am? Well, okay, but that doesn't sound so bad right now." And then I start laughing. I go, "Wait a minute. I can't go soon. I got a lot to do." And so they're like, "What do you mean?" And I remember them laughing like, "Oh," I'm like, "No, I have a lot of people that I have to meet and inspire. You don't get it. I'm getting out of this situation." And I remember them thinking like, "Okay, whatever, girl." And I'm like, "No, you don't know the way it works here in the projects. We haven't still told you about sex, drugs, and rock and roll." I said, "Listen, you can tell me whatever you want, but I don't think that's the way." And they kept telling me, and I said, I still say it all the time to this day. I go, "Are you sure? Are you sure it has to be that way? Because I have big plans." And I'll never forget that. And I carried that with me my entire life, thinking, "I wonder if she's right, I'm going." And then I realized maybe it just helped me live, carpe diem.
So you were in the projects all the way through high school as well.
Yeah.
And then you went on to college or university?
Yeah, went to university.
Yeah. Did you get any scholarships?
I did. I got a full boat. Yeah.
Whoa, no kidding.
Well, part for dance and part because, no money.
Right.
And scholastic. So
yeah, scholastic achievement.
I did really, really, I studied in school, and I was in every activity because I really wanted to go to college.
Right. And you wanted to escape from the situation that you were in.
And plus, remember, back to being an obstinate person, different than everyone else. The counselors didn't even think I should try to go to college. They're like, listen,
Right.
just be grateful for who you are and, keep waitressing. And I pumped gas and nothing wrong with that because I loved waitressing and pumping gas, but I wanted to do something a little different.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So what did you end up studying?
For my undergrad, I was a dance major. I went to Upper Montclair College, and it was like 20 minutes outside New York City. And then I realized I'm not that good, John. I wasn't that great at
Right.
it.
Right.
I mean, I was good, but I wasn't like Broadway great. So then
Right.
I
Okay.
dropped out for a year and ended up at Westchester University in Pennsylvania. And in the undergrad, the dance was in their health and phys ed department.
Okay.
And that's when I combined the fitness with my dance. And that took me on a
Right. Yeah.
whole journey that I had no idea.
And how did your mom? I mean, was your mom still alive at the time? How did she cope with you like being away at university, not being able to? And did she try to hunt you down there as well?
Oh, yeah. So I was always a little bit tougher than my dad and brother in that I didn't want to enable her, because even though she battled mental illness, she did understand there's repercussions. Like, if you do this, I'm not coming home. If you do that, I'm not doing this. So I would put all these ramifications on, I'm not going to come home for visit if you act like this or treat dad like this and different things. I'm not sure she did it all, because I think my dad didn't tell me because he still wanted me to come home and visit.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But she knew these were my rules and this is how I would do things. And, of course, even though it was so bad, and a lot of people say like your dad shouldn't have stayed there because he should have gotten these kids out of this situation. So there's that side too. I always felt my heart went out to her and my dad. Like, I thought they had horrible lives. Like, to battle that mental illness, I can't imagine. And not that you should put up with it. So there's a difference. There's a difference between being compassionate and sympathetic and getting yourself out of that situation, because even if they are mentally ill, that doesn't make it okay for them to treat you that way.
Right.
But I thought that was so sad. You know what I mean? Not to be able to know how to get out of that and to do things like that to people that she really did love, because she'd always say, I'm sorry, I love you. And my dad, I just feel like he wasn't strong enough to get himself out of the situation, But I remember when I would, even before college, like, I would have side jobs. I'd work at Pizza Hut, McDonald's, Burger King's, or whatever. And even through college, she would call up and say, this is her aunt so-and-so, and tell Sandy her mom committed suicide. And I knew this was just, it was horrible.
Right.
And now she's affecting my work, and people at the school, like, she would call and they'd say, hey, and they didn't know what to say. It'd go, oh my God, because they didn't know the situation. And and I would look at them and go, all right, well, dead is dead. I'll get home soon after my shift. And my managers would be like, well, did you say she committed suicide?
Yeah.
And they'd be like, yeah. All right. Well, can't do anything now. And I go, okay, it's not my mom. I'm telling you, it's not my mom. And so I had to tell them. But sometimes, I'd have to switch jobs because, they didn't want to deal with them calling like that.
Fair enough. So at some point in time, you ended up becoming a trainer for the Philadelphia Flyers. And in fact, it was the first female trainer for the Philadelphia Flyers. How did you end up, how do you end up, from the projects to now I'm a trainer for, this professional franchise?
Yeah, it is a great journey. So remember I told you I switched to Westchester, and in the health and phys ed department, that's where the dance was. So as part of my internship, you go and, you have to work for a semester. And I taught in a dance studio that was a mixture of dance and fitness. I did their aerobic classes.
Okay.
And that's
Was this like the bright pink like outfits and spandex?
yes, it was. It was
Yeah,
totally
yeah.
that. And so I would teach the other teachers who just knew sports how to incorporate dance into the fitness classes back then, and aerobics. And I became really good at it. And then I switched and I became a manager of a woman's studio and I did the sales. Then I went to another club and I became their aerobic director and I ran their pro shop and I did their corporate sales. I mean, I always was looking to do more. And I was at the right place at the right time in a nice neighborhood that somebody in my class said, would you come home and train me? I'm like, in your home? And back, this is the 80s.
Back then, yeah.
You're going to train me in your home? I'm like, how much you paying? I'm like, okay, I'm there.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I ended up training the who's who in Philadelphia because there weren't that many great trainers and going into people's homes. And from that, one of my clients, Ed Snyder, who was the owner of the Philadelphia Flyers and Spectrum, he said to me, you really should open up a health club. Like, you really should do that. Like, you should do that. And I'm like, whatever. And then some other people did. And so finally, I'm like, you know what? I never thought of myself in that way. Here I am training people. I had sent 15 trainers into people's home. I built that business. But then the next level, they were willing to support me. I opened a health club. And from that, I met all different people. And one of my mentors, Pat Croce, at the time owned all these physical therapy clinics. And he was one of the trainers to the Flyers. And him and Ed Snyder said, how would you like to bring you and 7 of your trainers in to train the Flyers? And I got to train Eric Lindros. And I was like,
right, yeah.
Yes.
Yes, in back in the day, Eric Lindros, for those who might not know, came across as like a great Canadian trader because he was drafted by a Canadian team but refused to play for them because it was in the French-speaking part of Canada, and so he ended up going down to play for the Philadelphia Flyers. So I remember the disappointment that like a lot of people felt around him and the choices that he made, but it probably ended up being a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, you were telling me that before. And I didn't know any of that he was thought of as I just knew. I mean, he actually was a really great guy. He was young and he was very polite to me and respected, which was, back then a lot to say, my talent, because a lot of guys gave him, some hard times. He had a female training him or a female coming in the locker room, but they really were very respectful. Now, all my team, I was the only female. All the other trainers I brought in, all the other 7, they were dudes, and a lot of them really big dudes. So,
right.
I did have my gang,
Right, you had some backup if you needed it.
I had backup. Yeah.
yeah. One of the things I wanted to ask about was because Philadelphia, they garnered the label America's Fattest City.
Yeah.
And I guess that's, too many Philly cheesesteaks, or how does this happen?
So we like to have fun. And part of having fun, it may be too many cheesesteaks, but we have a lot of great restaurants too.
Right. Yeah.
And so I think we just took things a little bit out of whack and we just didn't move as much as we should. And we ate a lot more. But I don't know, did I tell you the story about how I created the dance for them?
Well, that's actually what I was kind of leading into was you created, was it like the Philly like Philly line
Street
dance?
Yeah. So that's a fun story. That's a really fun story. I like fun stories. So I want to back up a little bit because I think for people to understand my mindset, they have to know that I took a lot of risk and was fearless because in my mind, I had nothing to lose.
Right. I mean, you grew up in the projects with a crazy mom. And
right. I mean, for me, like a lot of people I met, they came from nice families, money, or just, well-balanced.
Sure. Yeah.
Community.
Something to lose.
Yeah. And as an entrepreneur starting out, and, it took me 3 years to open my first club and everything I pitched, a lot of things didn't work, but I was like, what are they going to take? My money? I didn't have any before. I'll get it back. So there wasn't there was only one way to go. I mean,
Right,
really,
right.
there is really one way to go. And when you have that, because on the way up, you're going to have a lot of things that don't work out, you're willing to go for broke. So,
Yeah, yeah.
okay. So here I am. Now, this was my third health club that
Okay.
I opened. First one, Bell, in Philadelphia, and it was right at 19th and Market. So it was a few blocks from City Hall.
hmm
In 2000, it comes out with Philadelphia's voted as the fattest city. And I'm like, oh my God, I failed. Like I should be doing something. I mean, I was a
Right,
health
yeah.
club owner. I had all these people. How can I not be helping my city? I have to give back. I have to give back. So it took me months, but I got myself a meeting with Mayor Street, John Street, had hired Fitness Czar, a really amazing woman, but she was more in the health education end of it.
hmm
She knew a lot about that end, but she came on the team to see what she could do for the city, right?
Right, yeah.
Okay, now a lot of the ideas were great, but to me they weren't fun. Remember, I said we like to have fun, so I
Right,
said,
yeah.
listen, all these plans, they're all great, but all they're going to do, you're going to send emails and proposals. It's going to be boring. I said, and I'm sitting there listening to this, and they're like, well, what did you have in mind? Now, keep in mind, John, I had nothing in mind. I went there to listen to these people. There was 12 of them sitting around a table. I didn't know what I was doing, but I jumped up in the middle of the meeting. Like it was like divine intervention. I said, I know what the city needs. It needs a line dance. And they're like, what? I go, it needs a line dance. We love line dances. We love to dance. And so one of the people say, well, do you have such dance? I said, well, no, he didn't have the dance. I said, I have sort of something, but give me a week and let me play with it a little bit. And I'll come back with a line dance that we can do it. I'll be great. We'll do it all over the city. We'll do it in hospitals, in schools, in the streets. It'll be something that they can pop and lock to, the younger kids, but you could also do it in the senior centers.
Right.
So Gwen Foster said, okay, Sandy. And I was very animated. I figured, what the heck? It's not my political career. Well, I go back. I go back and I'm telling my team, and they're like, have you lost your mind? I go, what do you mean? They go, Mayor John Street and Gwen Foster are Seventh-day Adventists. I'm like, so they don't dance. They don't believe in dance. And you're pitching them a dance? I'm like, well, she didn't say anything. And they're like, oh God. So I called Gwen and she's like, well, listen, just make it, family oriented. Like,
Right. Don't make it overtly. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very friendly. So what I did is I created a dance that had a lot of rocky moves to it, that was really fun and friendly, and that anyone would say, okay, well, I don't know. If you don't believe in dance, I mean, it's iffy, but I thought, okay. So I had created it, but now we had to get the mayor to see it. So how am I going to get the mayor to see it? Because I created it. So Gwen, again, my buddy goes, listen, we're having a political meeting at one of these Italian South Philly restaurants. You show up, come to the meeting. I'm like, a political meeting with his peeps. Yeah. And bring your boom box and you'll just present it in the middle of the restaurant. Now, John, I'm a little bit crazy.
Right.
But I'm thinking, we don't even know if he's going to go for a dance, let alone you want me to interrupt. But I thought, okay, not my political career again. So
Nothing to lose. Did you just bring your crew with you? Like, because a line dance needs more than one person, doesn't it?
No. You don't, to do a line dance, it's just one person, but it's just more fun with people. Yeah.
Okay.
Just need one person. Okay. So it's just something you repeat and then you turn, you repeat, you turn. All right. So I brought my boyfriend though. So I'm sitting there though, and I go, and then I start chickening out. I'm like, no, he's going to kill me. This is like, first of all, it's inappropriate, but Gwen's on one side going, get up now. And my boyfriend's like, Sandy, come on, go Weston. So before I did anything, I pushed the button on the boombox and I was dancing to Jennifer Lopez, Let's Get Loud. And I did the dance. And people in the restaurant are like turning their heads. And then they start getting up and they're clapping and whatever. And I look at him. I thought I saw him nodding to it. And then I just quickly sit down, don't look up. And I'm like eating my ziti and meatballs because I didn't want to see what he had to say. And he came over. I'll never forget. He put his hand on my shoulder and he said, You done good, kid. I go, I did? I go, that's great, because I named it after him, the Philly Street line dance. And I could see it. It'll be all over. And I swear, John, it got bigger than I ever thought. It was everywhere. We were in the cover of the Time magazine. We
Wow.
performed it. I performed it with the dance team and the 76, dancers. It was great.
That's
But that
amazing.
just shows you that it's not complicated, right? It wasn't anything, like big, like thought, like huge, complicated thing to overcome, how we're going to reduce weight in the city. It was something fun and lighthearted that I knew everybody could get behind. And that's what I've made my career on, little things that you think, oh, that can't have such a big impact, that
Yeah.
you can do every day that have a huge impact.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. What a fun. Is it something that's still practiced to this day? Like, is it still in existence? This Philly street line
You know
dance?
what's funny? I was trying to archive it because somebody asked me that, and Leon Huff, they wrote a song to it. We recorded it, so do the line dance. I haven't heard it in years, but somebody said they found it online, so I have to look it up again because I can't. I want to see what it looks like. It's crazy. Yeah.
That's absolutely fantastic. Well, what a heck of a story, and it's a story of overcoming significant adversities. So, from getting locked out of your own home, forced to grow up way younger than you should, living in a chaotic family life, growing up in the projects, to having it just, hey, why can't we do this kind of attitude? Let's just do this anyways because I got nothing to lose. And it's that attitude of like, I don't have anything to lose. I only get one kick at this. Might as well make it a good one. That's
Yeah.
brought you to, through all of these amazing things, from, trainer to the Flyers to, building the line dance, and just having a lot of fun while doing it. And so I think
Yeah.
it's, what a heck of an inspiring story. Just thinking about, for people that were listening to this and listening to all these different things you overcome, what you've done, what would you like people to, if they were just taking like one nugget away from this conversation, what would you like people to take away from that?
From what we talked about, I think I would tell them this: don't make a big hairy deal out of things.
That's your life advice.
Don't
Don't make a big hairy deal out of things.
like don't complicate things. Even if I could get them for the next 30 days before their feet hit the floor, just try this. Think of one word, just one word, and change it up, because you never know what mood you're going to be in. If you're feeling pretty down, you don't want to go to joy. You might want to just go peace. Think of one word of how you want to show up in the world. Just one word. Just take 30 seconds. I'm not trying to create anything that's going to say extra time. It's not complicated and it's not time consuming. And then that one word, if you can, put it somewhere that you reflect on that day. And just throughout the day, do a check-in and say, am I feeling pure joy before I make that call, before I do that deal? Is that something that's going to bring me pure joy? Or if it's power or fun or ease and flow? And if it's not, take a step back until you can get to that point. Or don't write that email, or don't take that deal. Something simple. It's just so simple. It sounds like it can't be that powerful. Can make a huge difference in your life. And then I do want to add one other thing.
Mm-hmm.
I feel as if people underestimate how truly powerful they are. That if you tap in, even just for a beat, to listen to your inner voice, whatever you call it, your higher power, just tap into your heart, just even for a minute, you'd be surprised the answers that'll come to you and what you're capable of. So, don't sell yourself short.
I love that. I love that. If people want to get in touch with you, where is the best way to reach you?
My website is Sandy Joy Weston, so they can find me on everything. Sandy Joy Weston, Weston is my website, and everything's there. My podcast, my letters, whatever you want, blogs, and
Awesome.
all my social media is Sandy Joy Weston.
Awesome. We'll make sure we include that in the show notes as well, so you're easy to find. Well, Sandy, thank you so much for being on today. Thank you for sharing your very, very inspiring story. It's been such a pleasure chatting with you.
Oh, this has been fun. I haven't thought about some of those stories in a long time.
That's awesome. All right, take care. Thank you so much for tuning in to Between the Before and After. If you've enjoyed this episode, please like, share, subscribe, or leave a review, because that helps this podcast to reach and inspire more people. I love exploring the stories that take place between the before and after, the powerful experiences that shape who we become. And I love human potential. I love the possibilities that lie within us. So whatever you may be up against, I hope these stories inspire you, because if you're still here, your story's not done yet, so keep moving forward.
Anyone can come from any place of brokenness and destitution and build an amazing life.